Okay, I'm feeling kind of masochistic, so how about outdoor survival? And yes, the fun of this is there's multiple scenarios to have misery through. Okay, first thing is, my wife and I played this recently, and a couple of times. She really likes it. It probably says something I shouldn't think too hard about her. Anyway. This was always the game that I called Death in the Woods. The main reason is because the very first scenario, Lost, is so horribly bad. It's just this random wandering around until you die. But honestly, many of the other scenarios can kind of have the same kind of, geez, how do I get where I'm going? And if you screw it up and if you don't play carefully, you will die. But if you're kind of careful and not terribly unlucky, you can survive through most of the other scenarios and actually get to play something that's got some minor interest. Of course, in order to fully experience this, we're definitely going to play the Lost scenario, but we'll also play another one. Now, let me go over the game a little bit. Unfortunately, I've got this stupid bag in my hand that I've got to open. I've got a camera. I've got to be careful not to show anything I shouldn't. Okay. So, what you have on the game is a board with some little spaces on it. These little deer indicate that there's food available. Anywhere where there's a river or a little pond, that's water available. There's these little houses which have different uses in the games. Often they're just a setup position. You of course have your standard Avalon Hill scenario cards, and each one of these comes with its own direction ability, which is your movement rules in the game, necessities, how you get food and water in the game, and then an optional encounter table, which of course we'll use. You also have this little chart, which this got lifted completely in Rollmaster, one of the expansions. I think Rollmaster expansion 5, maybe 5 or maybe something else, as this wilderness survival like rules for Rollmaster. And basically they just reproduce this chart, not the life level index card, indicating how much you suffer by traveling without food and water. It was pretty lame to do a complete rip-off of this. Anyway, what you have is you're going to have all your counters set up here, and I usually have my setup beforehand. And basically your water and your food index start at these locations. Your character counter will start on the board somewhere. We'll talk about that in a little bit. With the life level index indicating which character counter there is. You don't really need this because the missing counter, if you put them all out sorted, and you kind of want to do that, it gives you an indication of where your life level is. But they give you an extra counter. They also give you these blank counters and things like missing people and stuff like that you can hunt down. Now what's interesting about these counters, the way they're going to work, is as your life level index drops, your counter gets worse and worse. So the picture starts looking unhealthier and unhealthier. But the important factor on these is the little number, which is your movement allowance. And eventually when it gets to 0, you're not going anywhere. So unless somebody does something for you, you're not going to survive. And what's kind of cool there is there's like, 4 boxes where you get to die slowly on the board. Although it probably won't be that slowly, because if you're that bad off, chances are you're in the worst ends of the water or food index, well, especially the water. The way these work is that each turn that you go without water, you're going to lose a box on here. Each turn you go without food, you lose a box on here. When you cross one of these boxes that says a life level, you lose a life level. Or maybe more than one. Up to 7 going without water for too many days. That makes sense. They should do a space version of this with an air chart too. All right. The way movement works in this game is very random. Basically, you're going to roll a die on your direction ability for the particular scenario, and that tells you how you're allowed to move. Sometimes you have no control. Usually you control some aspect, though. So you either control the initial direction that you start moving in, or where you can turn and in what direction you turn, which you can usually do like once. Sometimes you can control the entire path of movement, which, if you could do that all game, you would never have any challenge at all. The challenge of this game is kind of coping with positioning yourself in a location on the map that will increase your odds of like staying alive and being able to do what you want to do. Then you check to see whether you've met your food and water necessities for the turn. Then there's I don't remember what it. Yeah, there's a random events segment. And if you don't have food and water, that affects you here. On the random event segment, this is optional. You roll a die. On a 5 or 6, you have a random event. Maybe. You roll another die over on the wilderness encounter. A 1 gets you a natural hazard. A 2 or 3 gets you an animal or insect. And a 4, 5, or 6 means you have to pee or something. And then you roll once more to see what the effect is. And the effects can be usually pretty bad, but some of them are okay. Like, here you drink your pee. And here you eat your foot or something. Or you found a Snickers bar in your backpack. Whatever. Just random shit that happens. And that's fine. Sometimes you might just lose turns, essentially, where you have to live off whatever land you're on. You decided this was a nice place to sit and smoke a bowl. Yeah. All right. Each of the scenarios is also going to have some kind of objective. Lost, the objective is to get off the map. You'll start in the middle. There's 5 of them. Survive is to make it across the map alive. Search, you're looking for, I think, a party of people who's missing on the map somewhere. Rescue, you're looking for a lost person, but you have to also bring them out alive, and that may be more complicated. And finally, the last one is pursue. I think that's a one where the people are playing against each other, where one person is trying to run from the others. I guess all of these, except for the last one, could be played solitaire, but only Lost really plays well solitaire, because in Lost, you're not really competing with the other person so much as you're just trying to survive, and that's a tough thing to do. In the other ones, it's kind of fun to have 2 characters or more competing because they have to take risks in order to win the game. And here's where context comes in important. Where I totally throw it out the window, right? Here I am in the woods looking for someone. I'm a search party. Yet I'm going to risk my life and starve to death so that I can be the first one to find them. All right. But it does make for kind of a funny game. And, this would be a lot more fun with beer, I think. Well, I got something. Just a little brandy. But, yeah, I can imagine sitting around chugging some beers and just kind of laughing and enjoying this because it is very silly. All right, I think I've given you enough of the rules. I don't want to go into too much detail. I think I mentioned this, but I know I meant to. Hello Gregor did a very good coverage of it. He played one of the scenarios through, actually. And maybe if I had realized that before I had decided on this, but now I'm like kind of set my little mind on it. I don't know if I'm going to do all the scenarios. But yeah, he probably does a better overview of the rules and definitely captures the feeling of the game in a more poetic manner than I do. Up it goes.